Welcome to episode 1, Breaking Patterns. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for starting this journey with us, and I hope that in this moment that you have had a day that has offered you some laughter, some joy, hopefully some deep reflection time, introspection, all of the components that make for a really beautiful and vibrant experience. So we're going to hopefully support you along a path that is going to be deeply reflective, deeply insightful, hopefully bring up moments of joy, as well as taking a deep introspective look at our personal lives and our collective lives. So welcome aboard. It's really good to have you here with us. I'm so pleased. By way of introduction, I am Mariah Rankin-Landers, and I am so thrilled to be supporting you along this pathway.
And I'm Jessa Bree Moreno, and I am so honored to be here with Mariah to support you through a pathway of your own inherent creativity as an educator, and to build upon the strengths and capacities of the students that you love and teach every day.
Jessa and I teach with the application of a through line, or it could also be understood as a thought line, a way to follow a thought. In the study of dance, choreographers and dancers use through lines to connect a set of ideas in order to convey a comprehensive story or feeling. In education, we can powerfully do the same thing. We can use through lines to connect a set of learning experiences over time, a set of units that support deeper learning of the proposed through line. For example, how do scientists understand the world around them? Or how can history bridge us from our past to our future? On today's very first episode, we will work with the generative topic, breaking patterns. So make sure your materials are nearby, and let's get started. Our through line for this series is, do my lessons love my students? As we engage with each episode, we will connect all of our work to this question, with the hopes that we will all have new insights and understandings about the power of our own teaching.
Mariah and I also work with the idea of creative inquiry. Now, you may currently be familiar with using understanding goals or maybe even essential questions in building your lessons. And we at Studio Pathways work with the concept of creative inquiry because it builds upon your students and your own inherent curiosity, engages that curiosity in the world around them, thereby building up their critical thinking skills and authentic engagements with society. The creative inquiry we will work with for this episode is, how do I identify the patterns I need to break and create new ones? Now, in a moment, we will invite you to start to take a look at some of the patterns at play in your own life as a way of understanding the societal patterns at work around you. Now, some of these patterns may be joyous and life-affirming, while others may have led to harm. Still others may be morally neutral. In a moment, our creative inquiry work will invite you to both consider what has been and reveal perhaps a new vision for what could be. As educators, it is essential that we are consciously aware of our own wisdom and strengths. One of the ways we can do this is by practicing conocimiento. Conocimiento is a practice developed by Gloria Anzaldúa and brought to us by Dr. Shakti Butler. It's a way of focusing on our own inherent strengths as gifts and bringing these gifts to our community through multiple ways of knowing. These might be cultural ways of knowing, emotional ways of knowing, and in the end, they contribute to a collective wisdom building. We'll begin each episode together in a practice of conocimiento. We invite you now, wherever you are, to notice your breath. Notice the floor beneath your feet. Notice the room around you. Take a moment and gaze around your room and look for an object or a place that your eyes would like to land upon. Maybe out a window or at a plant, or perhaps at a photograph of someone you love. As your eyes rest on a place of beauty, go ahead and consider the following questions. What is a gift that you carry with you? What is a gift that you carry with you? How did you come by way of this gift? Was it nurtured? Was it learned? Perhaps you read it in a book. Maybe it was inherent. How did you build upon this gift, and how does this gift serve your community now? Your friends, family, colleagues, and the students that you serve. If you could name this gift, what name would you give it? Go ahead and write that name down in your journal now. Consider that name your strength. In a moment, we're going to embody this word using movement or gesture. So go ahead and take a moment to get yourself comfortable in your body. If you feel free to stand, please do so, or stay seated with me. Now, when asking an adult to do movement in the body, sometimes it can feel a bit uncomfortable, but it is so invaluable, especially for our youngest learners who have yet to separate learning from body and mind. Are you ready? Okay, so we're going to start together. I'm going to take my word, say it's nurture, and I'm going to create a gesture along with the word. So for me, perhaps it's reaching out in a large hug and pulling it in. So I invite you to do this along with me, even if you feel a bit silly at first, because what we're doing here is invoking our mirror neurons. You may already know about mirror neurons. They help us to imitate and reflect as a way of learning, and we do this from infancy. Cognitive science tells us that not only is this a wonderful way to encode new information and retain knowledge, it also helps us build empathy in our learners. Okay, your turn. Take a moment now and find your own gesture. Once you do, repeat it, expanding your range of motion. Take a risk. Repeat and repeat. Start to find a beginning, a middle, and an end to this gesture. As if in this one gesture, you're telling a whole story. Repeat and repeat. If you're able, add your word back into this gesture using both language and movement. And repeat. Repeat your word and gesture. Keep going. And shake it out. Good job. Go ahead and return to your journal and note down any new ideas, thoughts, or sensations that might have come to you through this embodied practice of conocimiento.
In visiting the California African American Museum in Los Angeles, I came across the work of Adia Millet. Her work absolutely stunned my senses. I was taken with the jewel-toned colors, the geometric shapes, but most importantly, the generative topics she was working with, breaking patterns. I invited Adia to tea, and we collaborated on ways that we might be able to bring this idea of breaking patterns to education. It was apparent to me that education and that teaching had a lot of patterns to break. I had patterns that I was constantly looking at that were carried out from my childhood that were still playing out in my teaching practices. And that we collectively have patterns in our educational system that are playing out from our past, and maybe they no longer serve us. So when I saw Dia's work, it just became really clear to me that we should all be wrestling with this idea of breaking patterns, both on a personal level and on a collective level. And so it has become the first engagement on this Pathways in this series as a way that we really start to begin to look at established patterns held over time through this entire educational system, and as a way that we can begin to unpack that which we need to really take a deeper look at and build out practices for liberatory learning, which is one of our end goals. We'll talk more about what liberatory learning means as we move along in this series.
Teaching requires breaking patterns. Now, as educators, we have inherited systems, procedures, policies, many of which contain harm that have gone unquestioned. Perhaps many of these you see in operation at your school site or even in your own classroom practice unconsciously. Perhaps there are things here that you can see you want to change but aren't quite sure how to go about it. Together, we're going to invite a series of questions that invite you to think about these patterns and perhaps come up with creative solutions. Okay, let's prime our minds with just a couple questions to get started. What patterns are you currently engaged in? Are there any patterns that you can see have caused harm or that you would like to transform? Are any of these patterns at work in your school or classroom or with your students? Go ahead and take a moment and jot down any thinking coming to mind.
Okay, let's get started. You're going to select the pattern that you just identified, and you can choose whether you want to work with a personal pattern or maybe a classroom pattern. And we're going to turn that pattern into an image. So grab your pieces of paper, and for instance, if your pattern is perhaps having a little bit too much coffee in the morning, you might make an image of a coffee cup. You can also go abstract here. It's up to you. You are the artist. I'll give us a moment. You may pause the video here if you need more time to create.
Now, some of you might be feeling giddy with pleasure that we've asked you to make art today, and others might be feeling discomfort, tension, maybe even fear. All of this is perfectly normal. Just remember that when learning a new skill, just like your students, when faced with a new math problem or essay prompt or language that's unfamiliar, may feel tension or fear. In that moment, you just want to maybe tighten and relax your muscles a few times, release some tension, and start to practice. Art making requires practice, just like learning a new sport or cooking a new dish. And in art making, there is no right or wrong, just preferences. So go ahead and play around, make some new decisions, and see what you come up with.
Thank you, Jessa. That is such a good reminder. What we're going to do next is use narrative intelligence to do some deeper thinking about this pattern. I've been inspired by the work of Erica Williams Simon in her book, You Deserve the Truth. These questions are adapted from her work. So grab your journal and get ready to do a lot of writing. If you get stuck on a word or the writing section, just turn to color, symbol, and image as a way to convey your ideas and thinking. Oftentimes, colors, symbols, and images can support what we're trying to convey and help communicate more powerfully. Here we go. Narrative intelligence provides a framing of questions categorized as identification, understanding, and creation questions. We begin with the identification questions. What pattern do I want to break? Where did I learn this pattern? What beliefs do I have about this pattern? Where in my life have I seen this pattern? My beliefs, fears, assumptions, and certainties about this pattern are based on what premise? What else is true about this pattern? If I were writing a children's book about this topic, what would the moral of the pattern be?
Okay, we're checking in just to make sure you're doing okay. You ready for the next set? Does this pattern serve my values and me? How does participating in this pattern make me feel more often than not? Has this pattern caused any harm to myself or others? Has this pattern brought me closer to the person I want to be? educator I want to be, the life I want to live, the world I want to live in. Doing okay? If you like, take a moment and shake out your wrists, stretch out your neck, whatever gets you centered back into your body. What we've been doing together is called artistic research. Now, the artistic research process is a way that we center the creative inquiry process in action in the classroom, applying often artistic methods to understanding things further. Now, take a look at the pattern you've just created. Perhaps you're feeling attached to it. If so, go ahead and take a photo of it. Sometimes when students are in the process of working or developing something, they become attached to their creation, but it needs to be further developed. Go ahead and make the learning visible by documenting this process. This is a concept we'll return to later in future episodes around authentic assessments. But for now, take a look at your pattern. Start to notice what you'd like to break in this pattern to make a new one. Now, you may be the kind of person who wants to scrap it all and start over, or you may be the kind of person who wants to carefully rearrange piece by piece with the papers you have in front of you. Try to notice this as non-judgmentally as possible and begin the process of creating a new pattern.
In our education world, we carry out many learned behaviors, mindsets, and ideas that are relics of the past, such as having students line up with their hands behind their backs. This is a system and procedure found in the prison industrial complex. The school-to-prison pipeline is an examination of patterns that are replicated in our education system that serve the prison industrial complex. Ones which, like you, we are invested in breaking in order to seed and create pathways for a brighter experience of living together. The creative inquiry for this session has been, how do we identify the patterns we need to break and create new ones? What are you considering now in this moment? What are you excited to break and what are you excited to create?
Beautiful. Congratulations. You've just engaged in an artistic research process into a generative topic, using creative inquiry to investigate our through line together, as well as developed your own practice of conocimiento. Beautiful. We hope that this has helped land you into a place of considering patterns you look to create and break in the world around you.
We hope that this session has supported you to identify existing patterns and has supported you to think creatively about ways that you might introduce new patterns for teaching and learning and new opportunities for you and your students. We will see you in episode 2, where we will look at the intersections of culture, cognition, and the arts. Until then.
See you soon.
my life.